How you doing, guys? My name is Philip McKernan, and thanks for checking in. Today I wanted to talk about happiness, and before you hit pause or turn off the video, because there's so much around happiness been throwing at us around the world, and everybody seems to have the 5 steps to happiness, but there won't be any steps necessarily here. It'll be a philosophy, it'll be a bit about the inhibitors of happiness, and then the illusion or the challenge or the sensitivity around trying to make other people happy, which is a little bit of a boiling pot for some people. So very, very briefly, what I believe is fundamentally, I just came back from Aruba. I was asked to speak, and by the way, if you don't know where Aruba is, don't feel ignorant, because I didn't know where Aruba was. I had to go on the map and have a look where it was. So I was invited to a conference down there. Aruba is a small island just off Venezuela that is known as One Happy Place. And I think just because it's called One Happy Place doesn't mean it's one happy place. I think that's the point. I think there's this pressure on us to be happier than we are, and all this guilt about not being as happy as we should be because we have all these things and all these opportunities, etc., etc. But anyway, I went down there to work with, I was actually probably 80, 90 or 100, business owners and leaders from around North America, actually around the world. And my job was to come in around happiness, and because that was the theme for this experience, so it was great. And obviously, by refocusing on happiness, even though I've spoken about it before, it kind of brings up new things because you evolve as a person yourself, as a speaker, as a teacher, and also then you get to experience other speakers and other philosophies that weekend as well. So you get exposed to it. So I'm bringing certainly what I believe to the table, some of the things I've seen, and some of the things that I've witnessed when I'm working with people around the world. So just back to my own philosophy, I think we should stop chasing happiness, number one. I think we should just forget about happiness. I think happiness is a byproduct of other things. Nor should happiness be considered to be something that is available to us 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I think our happiness levels move naturally with life. But I think fundamentally we can shift that movement to a different level by chasing what I think is much more important than happiness. And what I'm talking about and alluding to is meaning. Bringing more meaning into our lives. So what I do is I break it into 3 elements of a person's life, 3 pillars, 3 nuances, 3 relationships. The relationship, the work that we do, the relationship with ourselves, and the relationship to others. So work, self, and others. And if we can bring more meaning into those areas of our life, what will end up happening is the byproduct of that is happiness on a more consistent basis at a higher level. So we just feel better about ourselves. I mean, it's saddening in a sense, the amount of people who are disconnected in the work they do, and to think that what we do professionally doesn't affect us personally or vice versa is ludicrous. So if you're spending 8 hours a day working in a job or running a business that you really don't enjoy, you can't just switch that shit off when you come in the door. It affects your ability to be present around yourself and give yourself a good time and respect yourself, and to be there for the loved ones and the people that want you and need you in their lives. So it affects our happiness level. So again, just to remind, I just think we should stop chasing happiness, derive more meaning in our lives, and what you'll find is you'll be happier on a more consistent basis. If you choose not to step in and create more meaning in those areas, that's a choice. But then it's hard to really rationalize and justify how you expect to be happy, because it's going to be a challenge. So let's move away from that for a second. Some of the inhibitors that I see, inhibitors are things that get in the way of our happiness. And the first one's probably going to surprise some of you, may even piss some of you off, but so be it. And that is goal setting. I think goal setting is one of these things that really inhibits people's ability to live in a moment of flow or in a space of flow, and to have a fluidity to their lives and allow things unfold without being attached to the outcome. So there's a lovely balance. I'm not saying we should never have a dream or an aspiration, but goals in the traditional sense and how they've been positioned. And I promise you, watch over the next 12 months, probably 2 years, you're going to see a big swing back from maybe many of the teachers and the gurus and the promoters of goals. And they're going to start maybe repositioning goal setting, because I think goal setting is completely overrated. And if goal setting worked, you wouldn't have as many people today finding themselves in a position in their lives and feeling maybe a lack of congruency or maybe a degree of unhappiness or uncertainty. In other words, if goal setting works, there's so many people goal setting, then that really means that if it works, then everybody should be blissfully happy right now. And they're not. So goal setting affects our ability to be present and therefore happy by bringing us constantly into the future. And the second thing is, often the goals that we set, we think intellectually they make sense. Because that's the problem, they make sense. But they're not aligned to who we are. So what we end up creating is unauthentic goals, pretty much constantly, subconsciously. We're not even aware that we're doing this. This is not a conscious thing. We don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to pick a goal, I'm going to chase it. with every bone in my body, with every piece of sweat that I can muster for the next 5 years, to find that when I reach the top of that mountain and I look across the horizon, I look around myself and go, is this it? Is this what it was meant to be? Or and then I'm going to pick another one. We don't wake up with that thought process whatsoever. But I find that's what's happening with people, is that we're creating unauthentic goals and chasing us. And goals are things in the future. So it's pulling us into the future constantly, as opposed to allowing us to live in the now and being open to see what the world throws at us. Other things that inhibit our happiness are things like approval. If we're seeking approval, I'm going to ask you a question. Who are you seeking approval from today? I'm not asking you the question is, are you seeking approval? It's who are you seeking approval from today? Because I've yet to meet a human being that, whether they like it or not, is not seeking approval from somebody in their life, whether it's their father, their mother, their teacher, the cousin down the road, whoever happens to be. And therefore that inhibits our ability to be fully congruent to ourselves and to choose things that we want to do, because we're constantly looking at it through a filter of what would they think. So we're being manipulated, and we're being encouraged, and we're being moved towards creating something and doing something that ultimately makes that person happy. Why? Because we're seeking their approval. We want them to see us as a success and to embrace us as the person that's done something really cool. So there's a couple of inhibitors. Emotion is another inhibitor. Some emotions, the not so positive ones like anger and other things like, say, regret and shame, are all these things that inhibit our ability to be present. If you haven't forgiven somebody and you carry a lot of anger towards somebody, it's not actually affecting them necessarily, even though you might be verbalizing it to them. It's really affecting you. So the anger that you're holding, the lack of forgiveness that you hold within yourself, is not necessarily serving you in the greater good. It's really inhibiting you and preventing you from actually being happier on a more consistent basis. So there's a couple of the inhibitors. The final piece, and this is the piece that I shared something on Facebook, a little bit out of context, and writing is not my skill set. You might say videos aren't either, but we'll leave that for a different day. But words are interesting, how people take them up. But one of the most, it's a kind of a frustrating statement, quite frankly, but it's also very unhealthy, is a happy wife is a happy life. And it's a statement that you probably heard many, many times. You might even use it daily yourself, who knows. Is it sexist? Absolutely, but that's not the point. The point is that is the term that's been used. That's the statement that's used all the time. It's not a happy husband is a happy life or anything like that. But let's just get back to the point I'm trying to make. That if your partner, man or woman, okay, that's just a statement, but it can be used for both, is happier, does it make your life happier? I think to some extent, yeah. I think to some extent it would. I think that if my wife was miserable, would it actually affect my happiness levels? Yeah. But my job is not to try and make my wife happy. That's not my function in this world. I used to think that's what it was. I used to think that I was here to make her happy, to try my best to make her happy. And what I've realized through not just my own personal experience, but working with so many people around the world, is that when we try to make somebody happy, what we do is it often leads us to compromise on some of the small things in life and some of the big things in life. Now, before you jump at the screen and start shouting or screaming or throwing shoes at the screen or sending messages to me and having a go at me, am I saying that you should never compromise, and am I saying you should never do something for somebody else with the attempt to make them feel good? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is at a more fundamental level, your job is not, your function is not to make them happy. Your job, if you choose to take it on, your mission, if you choose to accept it, the challenging thing is to understand and really realize that you cannot change another human being. You cannot, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try. But if you run and it's a balancing act to some extent, but if you trust and find the courage to follow your heart, to follow your soul, to follow your intuitiveness, to really lean into the things that you need to do, you will be a happier person. And therefore, the people around you will be inspired by that. They will be happier because you're happier, but more importantly is it will inspire them to take control and responsibility for their own lives. So it's a really interesting one, but it is really important. And it's ironic that I came off a flight on Sunday night very late. It was actually Monday morning. And I just come off this experience in Aruba, as I mentioned, working with these individuals in Aruba on happiness, etc. But I got into a taxi in Vancouver airport. And the gentleman said, were you on holidays? And I said, no. I said, I was there, I was speaking. And he said, what were you speaking about? And I said, well, in this case, I was speaking about meaning. I was speaking about happiness. I was speaking about, how to integrate, financial wealth into that, etc. And he basically really started to get quite interested. And it was very evident that this guy was, he was very, not just obviously a very smart guy, but he was very intrigued with the whole notion of growth and personal growth and integrating what we love and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I do this part-time, this taxi driving part-time, because I'm going to school at night to learn accountancy. And he said, basically, I know what's going to make me happy is that what I want to do is become an accountant and provide a lifestyle financially and otherwise for my wife. And he said, that'll make me happy. And I said to him, but you don't know that. He goes, what do you mean? I said, you don't know that. You're making an assumption that if you make more money and you provide a lifestyle, which I can only assume is, cars and holidays away and a nice home and school for the kids, all that other stuff, that your wife's going to be happy and therefore you're going to be happy. But you don't know that to be the case. You don't know that's going to be true because you haven't done it. And he goes, okay, that's a fair point. And I said, well, do you want to be an accountant? He said, well, not really. But I'm doing it because it's going to pay me and to create this lifestyle. And this is the predicament, and this is the challenge I see all the time, is that this man is going to do something that's not really in his heart, something he doesn't really like, something that he doesn't love, so he can provide the income to, and his conversation, I shit you not, was basically around, so I can provide this lifestyle for my wife. That's his functionality. So culturally, societally, personal expectations, I don't know where they come from. They're all different for different people. But his job is to provide a lifestyle for his wife to keep her happy. And therefore, the assumption is that he'll be happy as well. I've yet to see that happen. In fact, 99% of the people that I meet who go with that frame of mind, they're not happy because they're compromising who they are. They're not doing what they love. They're not really inspiring themselves every day and therefore inspiring other people. And it builds up resentment within ourselves because in 5 or 10 years' time, we find out that ultimately there's something incongruent. We're not happy. My marriage isn't brilliant. This isn't it. My health isn't brilliant. But it all comes back to the fact that he is spending 8 hours a day doing something that he doesn't enjoy or something that he doesn't love. So that's the type of sacrifices that I don't believe are necessary. So the analogy I've often used is when you start walking up that mountain of life, man or woman, it doesn't matter. This is not a sexist conversation. It shouldn't be. Sexism shouldn't come into this. Is left behind because they don't want to grow, and you feel your job is to go down and pick them up and bring them up the mountain. The mountain being just a growth, exploration, adventure. But in actual fact, if you have the courage to turn, not turn your back on them, but turn and walk up that mountain, they have an opportunity to follow. And I don't mean that follow in a condescending way, but actually follow you in terms of their own journey. I can't stress it enough. Maybe I'm not doing a good job explaining it, but I encourage you to consider that your job is not to make your wife happy, to make your husband happy. Your job is to try to be as happy as you can as an individual. And if you buy what I said earlier on, is to align with yourself with work that you enjoy or change your business to do it in a way that creates it more meaningful. Have a really good relationship with yourself where you actually respect yourself, that you don't knock yourself, that you're not constantly at yourself, you're not beating yourself up, not too hard on yourself. And you have a level of respect that makes sense. And finally, you have great, deep, meaningful relationships around you. And if you don't, that you're open to questioning that and going after that. The byproduct is happiness. And I promise you, the other byproduct is people around you are going to see it and feel it and smell it and just sense it. And they're going to want a piece of it. And they're going to want to lean in and they're going to want to change their lives. They're going to be inspired by you. But the one thing I've learned from all the work I've done on myself and with the thousands of people I have the absolute honor and pleasure to serve in different capacities around the world every single year is that you cannot change another human being. And if we spend our time trying, what we're going to end up is we're going to end up frustrated and we're going to end up stunting our own growth and settling in our own lives and settling in our own skin and settling for relationships that are not that meaningful. So hopefully that makes some sense. And if it doesn't, I apologize for wasting your time, and hopefully it makes some sense. And share the message if you think it has got value. Thank you.